Hello and welcome to the Wealth and Women podcast. Today we have one of Nationwide's powerhouses, Katy Barker-Cook, who's the head of finance operations. This means that she oversees the day-to-day running of operational process for circa 500 of her colleagues. When she's not at work, you'll normally find her either walking her dog Snoop or she'll be at the sidelines of a football pitch watching her 3 young boys playing football. So welcome, Katy.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Very, very grand introduction. But yeah,
good. And I had to get Snoop in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant Snoop Dogg. Met him personally. What a dog. Quite a character.
Still going strong, bless him.
Yeah. So you've got quite an important role at Nationwide, or a very important role. How did you develop into that career? Because I know you've been there for 17 years. So take us back to the start. How did it all begin?
Oh, a long time ago. It was a temporary thing because I used to live in Wales. So it was always going to be a 6 months, see how it goes. And once I kind of got into Nationwide, I've never really looked back. So had about 7 different roles in my kind of tenure there. Kind of started as a credit risk analyst and moved into data, then moved into kind of financial modelling, then moved into marketing for a little bit, and then kind of found my spiritual home, if you like, in the treasury space. But the core thread of all of that was to do with data and then obviously working with people. They're the 2 kind of core things that I really enjoy about my role. And then I was lucky to kind of see my kind of career go under some really great leadership in the finance space, and really supportive as like my period through maternity, and kind of embracing, I guess, how my career should be shaped when I came back from maternity. And now I'm like head of finance. So yeah, embrace the change as I kind of gone through all of those different iterations of myself, if you like. So yeah.
Right. And have you always wanted to work in finance? Was it something that just sort of, because most of it, we've in a lot of our podcasts, we said we've sort of fallen into it. It was never something that we intended to go into. Tracy's a bit different, but the rest of us, and a lot of financial planners, for example, that I know, they never sort of set out to become what they are today.
No, I never had a vocation ever. You know, some of my friends went off to university, doctors and vets and things like that. But I was just good at, I guess, business type, general academic kind of ability. So I went off to do economics at university. And then kind of fell into kind of financial services, if you like, in South Wales, and then saw my kind of career develop. But it's funny because I ended up working with someone I went to university with. There was a trained accountant. We both like work in the same team, so kind of gets you there. But yeah, no, never really kind of wanted to kind of stray into this space, but just found myself covering for people from a maternity cover point of view. It was my first ever job in financial services, and then found that I was not actually that bad at it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, kind of, yeah, and I'm just lucky enough to have certain opportunities kind of cross my path. So took them with both arms, really. So yeah.
Right. And what is it that you enjoy about your role?
Now it's working with all of amazing people that we have in the finance function there, with some absolute stellar talent at Nationwide. So really, really looking forward to kind of see people grow and develop, and how I can kind of help on that journey. So part of my role is not only looking after kind of the data and the technology side of the finance, but also people kind of development, so the communication and the engagement side. So some of my team will be supporting people in their early careers, but also supporting people through the talent development programs as well. So that is really exciting. The core part of my job, though, is problem solving. And I guess coming back to like... I was a developer as part of my career at Nationwide, and what I really loved is kind of like making sense out of some chaos, you know, this terrible data, putting into like a wonderful report and with an end product, and, you know, having that sense of kind of job satisfaction at the end and solving that problem for a consumer or a business team, or, you know, a manager, whoever it should be. And I guess I'm not so much into the detail anymore. My team have restricted access from my programming ability, so I can't go in and interrogate them anymore. But what I find the job satisfaction in a different way now, because I can solve problems. It might be on a more strategic level, or actually it might be on a people or an individual kind of person kind of problem. So yeah, no, I really enjoy that side of my job, and that is a common thing that in all my roles, Nationwide and before that.
I was really impressed actually. So obviously you sent over a breakdown of different topics and things that we can cover, and it seems that Nationwide are actually really good at some of the things I was reading about, where when it comes to like CVs and making sure that you're recruiting and there are no biases in there. There are programs for families that are being run. There are development programs. I was really impressed by how ahead it seems to be compared to some companies out there. It must really improve the culture in the company.
Yeah, it's Nationwide's one of those places where it trades on people relationship. Its head office is in Swindon, which is where I'm based from at the moment, and it's about circa 5,000 people there. So the culture is very important in how we get things done. It invests a lot of time in kind of creating the right kind of ethos and the culture. So there are lots of initiatives that are very well established now. So it's great. But I guess take a step back. So Nationwide is a mutual building society, so hasn't got shareholders. It's run for its members, so they're the people who kind of deposit their savings with us, and obviously we lend that out in terms of mortgages. So we're not there to make a profit or kind of like deliver for our shareholders. We're there to support our members and make the right decisions. Now, a majority of our members are our employees. And so it's really important, therefore, like we create the right kind of culture and the right kind of work environment, not only to work effectively and collaboratively and also see people develop, but also to kind of get the right outcome for the business and therefore, that reinforcing positive cycle. So, yeah, really important. Some of the initiatives, are fantastic. I think 17 years ago, it perhaps wasn't so progressive, but I think that was just a factor of where we were as a society, more in general. Had some experiences back then, obviously, that we all probably have, but I'm pleased to say that, Nationwide has tackled that and head on and kind of like stamped out, unacceptable behaviour. It's got clear policies on what that looks like and how to address it. Whistleblowing policies, for example, as well, fully confidential. But also kind of straining into the networks as well. So if you're kind of going through caring responsibilities, or you're a working mum or a working parent and you need kind of additional support, there's an opportunity to speak to people who specialise in that. And they're employees as well who do this side of the desk because they have a passion for it. They kind of want to share their experiences. So we also have like a mental health kind of programme. Whatever it is, there's a variety of different things that you can kind of tap into to make sure you feel supported in your role. So yeah, it's been fantastic to kind of see that grow and blossom, and also employees to kind of get the benefit out of it as well. So yeah, really important.
Gosh. And you mentioned there that there are whistleblowing policies and so forth. So how has your journey been in terms of being a woman in the finance industry, which has always been more typically male dominated? It might be different. I mean, we deal in financial planning. You're more, I think, retail finance is how you describe it. So have you had any experiences or anything that you found negative, positives, anything like that? Yeah.
So short answer is never really anything directly towards myself, but I have witnessed unacceptable behaviour, for example, and I still do today. It's still kind of not entirely stamped out. So where a senior leader, for example, may speak to someone inappropriately on a call in front of everyone, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. So I if I saw that within my team, I'd obviously address it very quickly and make sure that, expectations were set that behaviour is not kind of acceptable and kind of walk through the process. However, I'm kind of dealing with a situation right now where I've seen that kind of from a very senior leader, and I've kind of like really kind of wrestled with it. What do I do in that situation? It's really hard when it's at that very senior level. Like, do you put yourself on the line and kind of call it out, or do you kind of let it go under the carpet? Now, I want to do something positive about that, and I want to kind of like make sure that doesn't continue to happen. But I'm really, I'm not alone in probably thinking, is this career limiting if I kind of do this, or will I kind of be told to kind of go away? So I think that's a very real, live kind of thing that I'm going through at the moment. However, what I did do in that situation was speak to the colleague that was being kind of like, the key point in contact in that, and make sure that they felt reassured and they weren't alone. And I also thought that it was unacceptable. So hopefully, I addressed that, that they were feeling, very vulnerable, I guess, as a result of that conversation. So that's a live one. So interested in your feedback on what I do in that situation. And I just need to put my big girl pants on and kind of have that conversation. But yeah, otherwise, lots of time. I guess when I first started, there were boys club type behaviours. I had
We've all seen it.
all male senior leadership teams, no female representation. And that was fine because that's what I was used to. But what I would see as a result of that was, I guess, kind of not toxic behaviour. Well, yeah, probably toxic behaviours where only kind of a certain inner circle would get access to privy information and the rest of the team would have to kind of was second order, if you like, and kind of have to figure things out. That's not where the society is now at all. My lived experience is completely different. We've got much more kind of like gender balance in terms of leadership, and the culture's very, very different. So I think Nationwide has worked really hard to kind of address the balance, which is really good. But another experience I'll share with you, I guess a senior male kind of trying to deal with, I guess, a complicated relationship. So I had a peer, if you like, who, let's just say, didn't display the best behaviours and used to have, unacceptable behaviour, but kind of like not really care about how he kind of came across to colleagues. And it got to the point where it was kind of like a bit obstructive to our working relationship and also had an impact on my team and his team. So to try and deal with this, the manager at the time kind of got us in a room to kind of do a bit of conflict kind of resolution. And it was really interesting because this is where like emotional intelligence should really come into play, and it really didn't. So so there was a there was a chart in the corner and we got our pens out and everything. And basically the male manager said to both of us, right, you're going to share what, I guess, positives that you have for each other. So I kind of started and I listed a few off and trying to scrape the barrel really in terms of it because this guy was appalling. But so I did it, with positive intent and kind of did it. And then he wrote down, well, she brings some glamour to the office, and you're like, and like my poor manager at the time was just like trying his best, I think. But it was just really awkward and awful. The manager, my peer, obviously got exited from the society a few months later, which was the right result. But just, I guess senior male leaders not having the toolkit to kind of address some of those issues. But again, that was very early on in my career. So we're in a very different space now.
I think you're right. I mean, we've talked about it, haven't we, about emotional intelligence being very, very big now, actually people being trained in it, particularly with the job we do working with clients. It'll be the same with you managing who you manage, particularly in ours, not being salesy, but actually learning how to deal with people properly from an emotional perspective. And I think also having men who are a bit worried about showing emotion and showing vulnerability, and actually it can produce good things. I think if you've got managers who are willing to show a bit of vulnerability, it almost sets the tone for the rest of the people within the company. We've talked about it quite a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, and how powerful is at the end of the day, I mean, going a little bit back to the beginning, which I think is quite relevant, to feel like you can be the person that your team can lean on for those moments of vulnerability. Because I think as long as you feel as a team member that you are supported and you're not crazy in thinking, this is me, that it's like, it's not treating those moments as defining moments, and because they try to seep into someone's psyche, and that affects the way they feel and the way they do things. And so I think it's amazing to have someone like you to be there for your team and kind of translate all those things and mitigate those things, and understand that there are vulnerable times when you kind of need to be there for your team. And that's where you start.
It's that authenticity point and being open and transparent. And I am very much in that, because I've seen withholding information and the negative consequences that can have as a result of that. But also I've started, so my current role is, I'm probably about a year into it, and the role has kind of broadened and deepened because of market activity we've undertaken. And a recent kind of leadership event, it was about kind of leading through ambiguity and change, and how as leaders we need to kind of, what are the top tips that we can kind of look at and make sure that we're there for our teams. So as part of that kind of like introduction, I kind of shared how I was having more bad days than good because I'm so on the learning curve still, and which is great from a growth perspective. But most of the time, I feel, you know, a little bit overwhelmed. Lots of imposter syndrome kind of going on. But I recognise that is a symptom of where I am in my career at this point in time, and I think I've got that experience to know that, and that it's kind of a temporary point. But it's really important that I felt like I had to share that, and express that to my teams and make sure that they weren't alone in kind of feeling that. And I'm happy to stand up in front of 100 people and say that, and be comfortable to go back to my job and kind of carry on with it. But I don't think everybody is. No. So, and I think females in general, in my experience, have been kind of a little bit more open and kind of creating that safe environment where people can kind of express at what point they are in terms of their own personal development, but how comfortable they feel in the workplace. And that again goes back to the culture that I kind of want to set for my team. Yeah. From a diversity point of view, like, and from a curiosity point of view. If people don't feel comfortable kind of bringing their true self to work, I'm not going to get the, you know, all of like the benefits of having the right kind of employee mindset within the workplace. So I kind of try and work hard at that. But yeah, it can kind of vary depending on your leadership style and what point you are in your career, I think.
And I think it's I was listening to the threads of what you were saying, and I love the fact that you never once mentioned knowledge in the whole thing. You mentioned that curiosity and the problem solving and ethos and values and all that. And I think that's kind of it creates a foundation for a good resilience toolkit, whether it's emotionally or professionally or financially. And I think that's ultimately what makes you a strong partner in that conversation, because you can acknowledge change, and you can acknowledge all those moments where you had to pivot and you had to adapt and adjust, and know that, you know, when you went through your changes, like coming back from maternity and trying to, you know, navigate all those challenges, you know that change is part of life. And being on the other side of the table in that conversation is so powerful, because I find that, you know, again, we're not trying to say always men versus women, but we have different experiences, and understanding that whilst a man can stay steadily on his career path, and get better and better and be the master of his profession because he's in the game at all times, he can focus. For a lot of women, that is a luxury. Yeah. And understanding that it can take a toll on them as well. And we were chatting in the first episode, just as a manager, to really take your people as a whole rather than looking at them through the lenses of what they can or cannot do at any given point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few kind of experiences, and, you know, I've kind of been through IVF. I kind of had a different experience coming back from maternity, and I try to apply, I guess, my own lived experience of how I can support others kind of going through that journey, but also acknowledge people have different journeys, and they have different needs and different requirements and levels of support as they kind of go through their career. Just later this week, we've got an event for my kind of core team where we kind of lay out, I guess, what's expected of people managers, and the majority of them are male, but kind of, you know, this is how you should be having a one-to-one. It shouldn't be just task orientated. It should be, how are you? You know, kind of get to know people on an individual, and most people do. It's just making sure that we're consistent in how we apply that, and it's actually, you know, it's the employee, it's a duty of care that we need to show each other. So I think once you establish that and you contract and you care for one another.
And you trust each other,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Then you get the most out of your employees, and, you know, it's the give and take then.
Mm-hmm. And it's very rare nowadays to see people being in one place for a longer period of time. And I think it has become one of those things that is being dismissed as loyalty to a company and the loyalty to an employee. I think that's so powerful to have someone who is part of the fabric of the institution and kind of go, okay, well, just acknowledge the progress. Just like you said, you know, we've come a long way, and the only way is further up, and using the different perspectives, different people, the diversity, the richness of the humanity and the human nature to kind of progress the business. Yeah. I think that's so important.
Yeah, we have been on that journey, and we definitely have further to go. So I think in finance, one of my kind of core priorities at the moment is to support senior female leadership. What we have in the finance teams is a really good, strong, probably over-indexing in females in the lower kind of junior bands. But as we kind of progress up, we're kind of more towards the 40% representation. So that's kind of where I want to like really focus on. And what we've done to kind of like, what are our problem areas? How do we kind of like, what's the barriers? What are the perceived barriers in that female population? And we carried out a survey. The results kind of came back, and the perception was that you'd have to work full time, and actually more than full time if you wanted to get into those senior positions. And the fact of the matter is, you probably do, but can we challenge ourselves on that? Is there an alternative way? Can we demonstrate there are job shares, or can we demonstrate that Nationwide operate flexible working hours, but we can also formalise it through compressed hours, for example. But are there more kind of ways that we can kind of bring to life those stories? Or what about our male kind of counterparts as well? How can we kind of bring to life their kind of part-time working experiences? Don't have a lot, but we should absolutely kind of support that. So using data and I guess insights provided through kind of surveys to kind of really, I guess, tweak and refine some of our working practices and make sure they're as inclusive as we can be. The other aspect is, you mentioned like skills earlier, and I think it's really important that we kind of grow and develop our female talent in perhaps a different way to our males, because previous talent programs were set up to kind of focus on a different skill set, with like task and delivery focused, where the emotional intelligence, the softer skills, for example, that females tend to do very well in, were perhaps never really kind of celebrated in the way that we know now. So we've kind of initiated a female talent program where we kind of trial in, I guess, 15 female hopefully move on to be senior leaders nationwide in finance as well. So that's really exciting. We're using, I guess, an organisation. We just bring them into nationwide and see how they progress, but super keen to see how they develop. And it'll be things like, storytelling or confidence building or resilience or, all of those kind of like skill sets that we can kind of support them with. So looking forward to see how that progresses.
Sounds really exciting. I love it. It's brilliant, isn't it?
How
all these new initiatives that are coming through. So Katy, you're a mum of 3, set of twins, all boys. So how have you progressed up the ladder whilst managing that? You mentioned IVF. I know there was a relationship breakup, part of it as well. So talk us through that.
Yeah, no. So quite a traumatic time, I guess. So the IVF journey is obviously stressful to anyone kind of going through that. Again, I had a really supportive manager, and Nationwide have supportive policies around fertility treatment. So I had extra days off, for example, which is awesome when you really want from an employer. Really, really great. So I've felt very supported in that. My maternity kind of experience was okay. So I planned for a year off, but having twins, financial burden is quite high. So and also being quite honest, I lost a sense of myself at that point and didn't really want to take the full year off. So I kind of went back after 9 months. I really missed who I was in work. That was I kind of dealt with that. There was a kind of obviously that transition when you go back into work is quite difficult because you feel like the whole organisation has moved on and you're kind of lagging behind and you're kind of dealing with the foggy brain and everything else. So that was really, really hard. However, as well, soon after that, had a relationship breakdown. And when I was kind of like the breadwinner anyway, but then you go through a process where how am I going to support myself and 2 children on a single wage? And kind of had to kind of really, what am I going to do here? I can either work part-time and kind of take a kind of like a seat back and just kind of make that decision and acceptance, or I think I'm quite good at what I do. Do I just push on that a little bit more and see if I can get to the next level and double down, I guess, on myself and see if I can kind of secure additional financial stability for myself and the boys in that way. And I had a really great female manager at the time, and we had some really good, honest, candid conversations. And she was like, absolutely supportive of, your development and your pathway. Let's go for it. Let's do it. So she was like, a breath of fresh air for me and what I needed at that time. So massive advocate of women advocating for other people, especially because she'd been through it as well. So we did, and I spotted opportunities and I kind of presented. Anyway, it resulted in a kind of a promotion, which was great, and secured that financial stability for myself and the twins. So yeah, really, really great. I know that's not the experience everybody else has, so I'm acutely aware of that, and make sure that when we do offer policies and initiatives, that we kind of make sure that we have a buddy system now for when people return to work to help them through that process. And it's not with their line manager. Obviously, you can have a great relationship with your line manager, but if you don't, and you want that extra support, or you want that security blanket, someone else has been through it recently, we've set up that buddying system so that returners to work can kind of be supported in a different way as well. So that's really important. And also recognising people don't always want to take the next step up. Yeah. In fact, it's quite a terrifying experience to kind of juggle children and working. It's project management, right, on a day-to-day basis. So, understanding what additional supports are needs, and if it's, for example, a different working pattern to help with childcare, absolutely entertain that. And actually, that's one of the the things that we're seeing at the moment is some from our female talent. Can I work a different working pattern so that I can have a Friday off so I can kind of be with my child? Absolutely. And we kind of consider those on an individual basis.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this, haven't we, in our podcasts, about having a culture where it seemed more normal to actually be a bit more flexible or take a day off, or and having that at the top, so that I think we were saying, that women sometimes feel a bit worried about rocking the boat when they're asking for something that's not the norm in the company. And you're right in what you're saying. It's not just the benefit for women, it's actually the benefit for men as well. We talked about paternity leave, and trying to equalise that so that women get some more help at work and men can actually have a bit more time with their new babies at home and kids, and then that ripples on to maybe care for elderly parents. Yeah. Women normally take on that responsibility. So if there's more equality where you can get it earlier on, then maybe the norm is not going to always be seen as the women, as the people, as the caretakers. So it sounds, again, like there's some amazing policies and initiatives going on. I was curious with the buddy system. So what sort of things would the buddies be doing to help support the people returning back to work? Oh,
did you know that you could ask for compressed hours, for example? Right. Whereas not everyone will kind of know that option is available to them. Yeah. But just kind of like strike up that kind of, no questions are off the table type of conversation with them. So if hopefully that they know their buddy quite well, so they can open up and be, kind of honest with them and go, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z. Mm-hmm. And then the buddy, having been through it and know kind of what they can and can't ask for, can kind of help steer and guide them and bring them together. So yeah, I think that's the type of relationship. Yeah. And it could be a weekly touch point, it could be once a quarter. It's up to the individual. It's kind of like a mentoring kind of relationship. So it's up to the individuals what they want to get out of it, but it's absolutely there if they want it.
God, it's a great idea, isn't it?
It really is amazing, and I think what I like is the nuances around flexibility, because I feel like sometimes when people talk about flexibility, is an implied nuance of lifestyle, where actually in a lot of situations, especially for women, is a need to keep sane and to be able to show up, as a mother, as a partner, as a professional. And so I love the fact that there is a process around flexibility in that kind of positioned so that it allows people to be where they need to be, how they need to be. And it's not a compromise, it's an actual asset to be used.
Without flexible working, there is no way I would be at the position I am today without that. Absolutely, because to support all of the childcare, exactly what you said, and to kind of manage the demands in my kind of work schedule, there is no way I can do a 9 to 5, and there's still no way I can do a 9 to 5. So I think we have to talk about how work-life balance doesn't mean the same thing for everybody, and how people can, in senior positions, especially for our female talent coming through, how you get it to work. And does that mean that I'm working till 10 o'clock at some nights? Yes, absolutely. But does that mean I can go to the boys' football matches whilst they're playing in school? Again, it's about the give and take. So there is more we need to do on that space, but especially more in the male kind of side of it as well, and kind of making sure that we bring through that balance, because it's something that, you know, we need to address on both sides of the fence. So,
and I like that approach with who you talk to, because a lot of people, and especially women, feel alone in their situations, and they try to make it on their own, off their own backs, and that leads to burnout and a lot of, you know, mental health issues and so on. Whereas if you have resources, if you have people to talk to, if you have people to delegate things to, that makes a massive difference to someone's well-being. And the fact that, you know, being aware that through change, for example, in financial planning, we see this over and over again, people going through defining moments, such as divorce or loss of like bereavement, and, you know, it scars someone financially and emotionally. And being able to be there for them and to understand, actually, did you know that you can get some, I don't know, loans or whatever, or upfront salaries for different things, so you can move on, you can reset, that is incredibly valuable. Yeah. So they don't feel alone in that. I think people acknowledge, oh, you know, she must be feeling bad, or, you know, obviously it's a tough time going through a divorce, but there are so many ripple effects that affect someone, and it's not just about how well they can or cannot do their jobs. It's about everything else, the pressures financially, the pressure at home, caring for people. That is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and they don't normalize. And
sometimes when you've got all of that kind of chaos going on at home, you like the structure of coming into work, and that's kind of like your safety blanket, or your sanctuary, I guess, from all of that. So what I've kind of experienced whenever my people leaders have kind of gone through something is making sure they do know what options they have available. And if they want to talk about it, we absolutely can kind of use that time to kind of talk about wherever they want to, what arrangements can we make to kind of make sure that, you know, because I know if you're there for them in the tough times, it kind of, they return the favour, especially when you need them to lean in. And it's coming back to that trust relationship and being in it together. So I think that's so important. I've got a fantastic people manager who works for me, and one of her team was kind of going through some cancer treatment. And again, Nationwide's fantastic in terms of the support it kind of gives you. But it's not just the individual that is impacted as a result of the illness, it's the team. And again, she's got amazing emotional intelligence, and she's able to kind of navigate that, not only for the individual itself, but also for the team whilst kind of they're going through that. And obviously the return to work, because it's kind of like, you know, coming back again after an illness, it's the same coming back after maternity. The world has moved on, and how do you kind of navigate that as well? So it's the feedback that you get from individuals who've gone through a process like that and has felt kind of supported is fantastic to see, and exactly the environment I want to kind of create through my leadership team. So.
And you said something really beautiful around identity, and we see, especially with women, there are so many identity shifts, and you know, it's more often than not, it's caused by having children and having that goo gaga conversation for like months and months and months, and having to go back to work and function as a grown-up in the grown-up world, and that can take its toll. You feel like you're shifting. I mean, I speak a different language, and I know how hard it is to filter through things and translate things and understand how I can express the same thing without sounding rude, or you know, and that is not even when not even kind of disregarding the lack of sleep, which I feel like I haven't slept since 2007 now with my kids. So just understanding that, you know, someone who goes through all those pressures and so on, they wrestle with their identity, an identity crisis, and being there for them and helping them rediscover their strengths and rediscover how they can add value. Because yes, the world has moved on, but just like anything, to allowing them that space to look through the lenses of fears, but also possibility. And I think you mentioned options, which is my favorite thing, because when we coach, we look at options. Because the worst thing for a person, I find, is that feeling of stuckness. It's like no options, no choices, now what?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of moves quite nicely onto something else that we were going to talk about, is menopause. that, you know, we've probably all got coming down the road pretty shortly. So at work, you know, you've got lots of policies and things and procedures in place. Is that something else that Nationwide and you know, the team?
It's something, I guess, as society we've kind of got to know a little bit more, I guess, haven't we, in the last couple of years? And I think Nationwide has embraced that ride of information, if you like. So yeah, you know, you have guest speakers in to kind of talk through, and this is open to like male and female colleagues because it impacts us all, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got more to do. We're just starting that because I think we are as we need to kind of do more kind of research, don't we, in the medical side of things, because it's still so unfair that it's still so confusing. But it shouldn't be in that position. But hopefully 10 years' time we'll be in a very different place. But yeah, no, it's really kind of, again, heartwarming to know that like my employer is really supportive of this. And I know I'm going to starting to go through it, not too sure, that kind of process, and be supportive in the end result as well. So I had a conversation with my manager about this. He will absolutely kill me, but basically I didn't know whether it was stress of the job or whether it was my hormones. I just had no clue, and I was like, went to the GP, blood tests were fine, but I still don't know like what's going on here. So I kind of expressed that, and I said, you know, in meetings my mind would go blank, which is really hard, right? Because and I didn't want him to think that I was being really rubbish at my job, but you know, it was grounded in perhaps something medical, right, or related. So I worked for my manager for quite a long time, so it was fine, but it's still kind of like that awkward conversation. Oh, I think I might be perimenopausal. And then he just went, I've got a great book for your husband to read if you want. I'll give you the link on Amazon. So yeah, I passed that on.
Great response.
Yeah, no, he's like, obviously.
Has he been through it?
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like he has.
Yeah, and got the scars potentially a bit.
Yeah,
so yeah, wanted to share that on. But
But it's interesting because in the first episode of the new series, we approached we were talking about ripple effects. And actually, when you have conversations about how you can improve the experience for women, actually it's not just the women that you are working with and for. You have a positive impact across many areas of their lives and their partners as well. And I remember we were watching our kids play rugby, and it was myself and a few other moms, and we were having, it was like a riddle contest. Do you know that name? What was the name? And no, it was that movie. And the men, they were like watching, like, where are you going with this conversation? I'm like, this is the riddle, like a constant riddle in my conversations, especially with my perimenopausal friends. And I said, but you need to be able to kind of embrace that. And one of the dads said, I tell you what, at work, we got this training. And the fact that they raised awareness around menopause, he said, now I have every tool possible at my disposal. And the way he talks to his wife is not like, she's crazy. No, he's like, okay, I think we need to pause. Have you considered this, and this? So the fact that he's aware of what she may need to kind of navigate that in a way that is not, it doesn't come across as condescending or, you know, like a compromise, like, oh, you know, you're on a downhill slope. It's almost like it's a temporary thing. You know, it's part of who you are. It's part of your development, and it's like, I'm here for you. Yes. But it's not in a judgmental way. It doesn't feel judgmental.
Just part of life, isn't it, that you go through?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one as well, isn't it? Because some of these kind of initiatives that we roll out for Nationwide is, we've got some menopause training, do you want to sign up? And then you get all the females approaching like menopause will. You get none of the males. So we're kind of working how we do it in a stealth kind of way for the leaderships, because it's super important. They all kind of need to know. On one of those examples was we did an all finance event yesterday, 2 sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And at the very end, they had to collect 3 tokens by going through like some stands to find out about skills and capabilities or some of the employee networks, for example. And once they collected 3 tokens, they could choose a book of their whichever. So it was gut health, for example, or menopause, or laughology. So dealing like using sense of humour to deal with resilience and training. So that, again, providing options, but also in a stealth way, kind of making sure that people have really what they need.
I like that. So I think we're coming to the end, but a couple more questions, if that's okay, just to finish off. So what's next for you, in the future? And also, what top tips would you give for our listeners and viewers in terms of progressing in their careers going forward?
Okay, right. So in terms of what's next for me, I've got no ambition to be kind of CFO or anything like that. Absolutely not. I am happy to kind of keep learning and growing in my current role. I've got so much left to learn. So if I'm here in the same kind of position in a couple of years' time, I'm absolutely happy with that. But as long as I continue to grow and develop, that's the most important thing. Yeah. In terms of top tips, really kind of reflect on, I guess, where you want to go. And don't worry if you don't want to go. Just explore what you don't like. Is it that strong enough as knowing as where you don't want to go? But also kind of create more opportunities or more options for yourself. Don't close them off. I think that's probably a good thing. Be curious. I surround myself with massively intelligent people all the time who kind of inspire me and raise my game. And I've ended up here as a result of kind of like some of the relationships and some of the I guess, the female relationships, more importantly, the strength of that can bring in terms of the advice, the feedback, and sometimes brutal feedback, but necessary sometimes. And just the strength of a female network is really, really important and something, I guess, seek out if you don't have one.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Katy. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Wealth and Women podcast. We really hope that the tips and Katy's story has been very inspirational to you. Please find us on LinkedIn or on the YouTube channel under the PFS.